episode of the Black Powder Podcast. And today, you guys are in for a very special treat because a good friend of mine had a break in his schedule and he was able to come through and help out. So I would like everybody to put their hands together for the one, the only Spike Cohen.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for having me on, man.
Yeah, so as we get started, I think you owe me some thanks. That's how we're gonna, because let me tell you, let me tell the people. I was on Spike's podcast, Muddy Waters, right?
Yep, my fellow Americans on Muddy Waters Media. Yeah.
So shortly after that, you were running with Vermin Supreme, and I endorsed you.
Yes.
And then quite shortly after that, the Spike Cohen universe expanded all over the nation. So
because of you,
because of me,
because of you,
I take full and absolute credit for your position in life right now. And I'm not asking for compensation per se.
Well, good, because I haven't made any money. Yeah. So I can tell you that ahead of time.
Well, eventually I think you're going to be successful. So I'm asking for a cabinet position.
Okay.
I want to be either Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State in the Spike Cohen administration. So that's all I'm really. Can I get your word here now in front of the millions upon billions of people that are going to see this? That
millions of billions.
Yeah, that you're going to honor your word and make me either Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State.
We can definitely have you in the cabinet. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. All right. So for those in some other universe that don't know who you are, can you just tell the basic Spike Cohen story to the people? Yes.
So hi everyone. My name is Spike Cohen, and I was literally nothing until Marcus discovered me last summer. So my background is actually the reason why I kind of seemingly came out of nowhere is because I kind of did. I came from the business world. I started a company when I was in my teens. It was a very successful company. I was able to retire from that about 4 years ago now. Actually, gosh, almost 5 years ago now. And since then, I've got involved in libertarian activism, podcasting, and that kind of stuff. And then that led to my running for the libertarian nomination for vice president, which was completely dead on arrival until Marcus Matthews endorsed me, opening the floodgates, leading to my becoming the nominee, and then now being the, I guess, head of libertarianism.
You know what? I'm going to be humble and say that I completely accept these accolades that you're providing me. Yeah. And you know what? I think I deserve them.
You do. So, you deserve it.
And for me, my journey to the Libertarian Party, and I'm there and I'm slightly beyond, but if I gotta fill in a bubble on a piece of paper during the November season, I don't even call it voting anymore because it's a sham. But when I fill in the bubbles, I always fill in the L's or my own name because I think I would make a great politician somewhere down the line. But for you, why the Libertarian Party?
So for me, the Libertarian Party is the only vehicle that's actually going to accomplish our goals of setting the world free, setting America free.
Right.
Excuse me. We have watched liberty Republicans, and we've watched anti-establishment Democrats, and we've watched people that have tried to use other parties to be able. Tried to use the I guess main two parties to accomplish it, to change those parties from the inside. But the problem is those parties are the same party. They have the same sponsors. They have the same goals. They have the same outcomes. It doesn't matter which side you elect. You just get more debt, more war, more control, more laws, more guns pointed at you, more powers being used against you, and more debt for you to have to deal with it, to pay it all off. And the only way that's going to change is by not just replacing them with another party, not just having a lesser of three evils instead of two, but by completely dismantling the system that they've built and having a system that is based on respect for people's individual autonomy, their ownership of property, their rights and their freedoms, and having a society based on freedom that recognizes that people do best when they're most free. That's why I believe the Libertarian Party. Now, with that said, if someone wants to run as a Republican and they're a libertarian, they want to run as a Democrat and they're a libertarian, and they believe that's an easier way to be able to accomplish something, I've long since given up on trying to tell people how to live their lives. I do whatever you feel like, as long as you are staying true to yourself, your character, and your principles. Whatever you want to run under, I don't care. I'm just going to tell you ahead of time, you're only going to get so far with them, because even if it's easier for you to work your way up the ladder, that ladder comes with strings attached. And I think long term, you're not going to get to accomplish what you want to. But that's why I believe the Libertarian Party.
Well, precisely, because I always say, why would either party change a system that brought them to power? Nobody does that. If you become a billionaire, you're not going to say, hey, you know what? I think we should provide, put forth these regulations that are impediments and barriers to businesses. So
to me, yes. Yeah.
So there's now I spoke with my last guest, who was Lyman Bishop in Montana. And I was saying there's zero daylight between Democrats and Republicans, and Americans are literally insane for continuously voting for either brand, thinking something is going to change.
Right.
And that's, right now, you had some pretty interesting points this last week where you said, where you were comparing the MAGA stuff to the Biden stuff. And I thought it was spot on.
Yep.
Because, you're not getting anything new. You're just getting more and more government.
Even their messaging is the same. So you can take a step back, and you can take a step back and you can say, okay, Trump, Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton didn't matter. We just got more debt and more war and more control and more taxes and more all of that. But then they're not even being original anymore. So Joe Biden, his campaign slogan was "Build Back Better," and he was the anti-MAGA, right? He was the anti-Make America Great Again. We're going to end this MAGA movement of white nationalist terrorists, and we're going to respect everyone. Build back better. Build, make, back again, better. Or no, wait, yeah, build back,
right.
Back again. Better, great. Literally, it's saying the same thing. We're going to make America great again. It's just using different branding, but with the same. And it's the people. It was so last year, I was, and still remain, very supportive of those who want to end qualified immunity, people who want to institute criminal justice reform, people who want to end the war on drugs, people who want to address the actual reasons why government tends to target the most marginalized, people of color, the poor, and so forth, because predators go after the easiest prey. The long answer is the short answer to it, but address those things and look at it from that aspect and actually deal with these problems. And I watched so many people who legitimately wanted to do these things, who got roped into believing, yeah, we'll get to all that. But first, we have to stop Donald Trump by electing Joe Biden, the architect of everything you're protesting against right now. The guy who for 40 years worked every day to build the thing that you're angry about. And his running mate, a black woman, who, by the way, is also one of the most brutal prosecutors in the country alive right now, a woman who put 2 men away on death row for crimes that she had evidence they didn't commit, and she refused to release the evidence. You're in California, you know what I'm talking about.
Very much so, yeah.
And so, these are who we're going to elect, because number one priority is stop Donald Trump and replace him with older Donald Trump. Like it's insane to me. It's like you said, it's literally insane. But what I think it is I think most voters are scared and they don't know their options.
Absolutely.
And they're told that if you vote any other way, then you're throwing your vote away. Well, I say throwing your vote away is voting for the people who made this mess in the vain hope that they'll fix it.
Obviously that's spot on. And I tell people in California today, vote your conscience, first of all. Whatever you believe, vote it. It's not me to judge, even though I will judge you. But when it comes to local stuff, you do have a voice in who you have as the representation. But in a state like California, voting for a Republican is absolutely asinine, because there's 4 regions of California that are going to dictate the federal person in federal elections.
Yeah.
So why not vote Libertarian and bring a third party to the stage where these other two now have to own up to their bullshit and be honest, because there is a viable option that's going to siphon votes away from them. And a lot of times people, it's fear. It's 100%
Yeah.
fear, because that's what Democrats and Republicans sell you, is fear. You turn on any of the two liberal or the few conservative news media outlets, and it's the fear that they're selling you, that you should be afraid of your fellow Americans for X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z reasons.
Yeah.
And that's what's one of the most disturbing things to me, because I don't want to live my life in fear. And you hear all these people saying we shouldn't live our lives in fear, yet they still refuse to look at options that would present themselves in a sense where, if you want liberty, you want to be free, look at people who are actually that are saying that, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let me ask you this: if the Libertarian Party had won, say it's Vice President Spike Cohen right now, what would have
Yes.
been the first three things you would have looked to accomplish in your administration?
So this is sort of similar to talking about the Rothbard button, this button that if you pressed it, you made government go away.
Yes.
Almost as implausible as that is if Joe Jorgensen and I had actually been elected to the White House. Now, I ran to win. I ran as hard as I could. I did everything I could do, but I also knew what the odds were. And I knew that we were largely just trying to message and get the message out there. Now, hypothetically, if by some weird thing, the Biden cheating machine was broken and it elected us instead,
Yes.
then we get into office. I think the number one goal is to start unrolling the active harm that's being done. So ending the wars overseas, bringing the troops home, ending things like these stuff we aren't even really hearing about until many years later, destabilizing foreign countries, supporting narco terrorists in Central and South America, which is leading to the surge of migrants to flee all that violence that's being created, all of that kind of stuff, and all of the harm that's being done. End the things like the war on drugs, and because again, at the White House level, assuming that we somehow got elected, but still the Republicans and Democrats were in charge of the rest of Congress, and we can talk about how this realistically would work. But hypothetically, we got dropped into the White House, and everyone's like, "Oh my God!" out of nowhere, Spike Cohen and Joe Jorgensen are in the White House. Undo all of the federal. All of the different executive orders that have been building up over the past 100+ years, and just undo anything that isn't directly there to protect lives, rights, or property, which is 99.9% of it, get rid of it. And then when people see the freedom that they get from all of that, and how that being freer also means that everything's better, that their lives are better, that they're safer. They're not just freer, but they're safer and they're happier and their kids are being better educated and everything else. We could ride that wave of goodwill all the way to Congress and say, I feel like I'm doing my talking points from 2020, ride all that wave of goodwill to Congress and say, okay, now the people see that this is how it needs to be done. Here are the legislative goals we have. Now let's talk about the real world. The real world is that long before anyone will trust a libertarian in the White House, or enough people to get us elected would trust a libertarian in the White House, they need to see that they can trust us in the governor's mansion and in Congress and in state legislatures. And long before they trust us on that, they need to see that our ideas work where it matters most, in their backyard, in their cities, in their communities. And an example of that's actually in your state. There's a town in California called Hanford. Yes. Deep red city. Mm-hmm. And a lady there named Kalish Morrow ran in 2020. She ran for city council. And it started as what we call a paper candidacy. She just wanted to show that there was another option. But the more she got involved in it, the more she realized, this is bad, the way things are being done here. It could be done better. And I have good ideas on how to do that. And so she started knocking on doors. She started going around town, and people would go, "Are you a Democrat?" Because she was running against a well-funded Republican. And they're like, "Wait, are you a Democrat?" She's like, "No, I'm way better than a Republican. I'm a libertarian. I want the small government that Republicans talk about, except I can actually do it." They loved it. So she got out of nowhere against a much better known and much better funded opponent. She won, but she was just getting started. She then converted other city council members and the vice mayor, who is now the mayor, to becoming libertarians too. And now we have a libertarian run government in Hanford, California. And they are showing the people of California what libertarian governance looks like. We have a similar situation in Burnsville, Minnesota, where a lady named Kara Schultz a couple years ago, she decided to run for office while she had stage 4 terminal cancer. She knocked on doors across her city and she got elected, and her cancer went into remission. So now she's working, and she got another libertarian elected, and now they're working on creating a libertarian majority in that town. We just saw in Pennsylvania where over 150 nearly 150 libertarians got elected across the state in these races that you never really hear about: auditor, constable, city council, school district. But these are the things that people need to see long before we're going to end up in the White House. People need to see what libertarianism looks like for fixing a pothole, for dealing with the question of, addicts on the street, for dealing with the question of, the water prices going up or something like that. Like everyday kitchen table stuff. They need to see what the libertarian answer is to that, because then when they see that we have the best answers for that, they'll say, well, I want them in charge of my state now. And then when that works, they go, well, now I want them in charge of the federal government too. Libertarianism has to be, and it's what we believe. We believe that things happen in a decentralized, local way, and that it grows as a result of people recognizing the value we provide. That's how libertarianism is going to grow, from the grassroots up.
Sounds like how this country was founded. Now, guy I used to coach baseball with, he always says, every thunderstorm starts with one raindrop. And that's what I got out of what you were saying, because I did hear about the Hanford movement. I didn't hear about Pennsylvania. And I don't know, do we need a media outlet to represent libertarians like Democrats have MSNBC and CNN and Republicans have Fox and Newsmax? Do we need a 24-hour libertarian news channel to pound liberty and good ideas? Because there's one thing that bothers me the most about our political system right now. It's no longer about the best ideas. It's about it's about selling you fear. And I was telling Lyman Bishop a couple of days ago, the thing about Americans is every day we go to work with people of variety of political stripes, conservatives and liberal, all of that stuff. And every day we go get a job done because that's what Americans do. And then we go home and we turn on a TV, and the TV tells you why you should hate your fellow Americans.
Yes.
I always want to pound that message into people's heads, because we're losing sight of, as a Black guy, I have to say the founding of this country had some pretty significant flaws from my perspective.
Of course.
But the concept and principle of liberty, which I also say all the time, I don't believe mankind has truly been free since the Stone Age, because once we started getting into metals and stuff, and nations started to rise, then there was an element that did not profess liberty for mankind. It was greed, ambition, and religious, and all this other stuff. That's why America has always been known as this great experiment, because it had never been done in the history of the world before. And now I think we have regressed to a democracy instead of a constitutional republic. And we are no longer looking at the broader picture of basically we all want the same thing. Why can't we find a common way to achieve that without infringing upon anybody else's rights and liberties?
Right. And so this is an ongoing problem, is that, like you said, everyday people work together with people. And even if we often don't even know each other's political opinions on a day-to-day basis, especially if we're dealing with strangers. We may be able to tell if someone's wearing obviously if someone's wearing a MAGA hat, or, just the way they're dressed or something, we might have a clue, but we make it work. Like, very rarely do you see someone that's like, I refuse to go to that cashier. I can tell they're a libtard. Like, that's just not how we are, right? Like, we typically figure out a way to make it work. Politics encourages you to see your neighbor as either your ally or your enemy. And the reason for that is because the nature of politics, the nature of using government as a means to decide how to fix problems or create solutions, politics is based on coming up with warring factions who decide how everyone is going to be forced to deal with this issue, or how everyone else is going to be forced to live, and everyone's going to have to pay for it no matter who wins. This creates a warlike environment where one need not exist. If instead we simply allowed people to be empowered to work themselves and with others to come up to their own solutions to problems, now we could have 3 or 4 or 5 different ways of looking at this, and then we could look at each other and see what's working well, what isn't working. Maybe we can collaborate. Maybe this works better than this. Maybe have some competition for which idea is best. But because we've removed the coercive element of forcing everyone to figure out the one way that we're going to make everyone live, now enemies become friends, or at the very least, just neighbors, people that are over there that it doesn't even matter what they're doing over there. Libertarianism has a very unifying factor in that, and Larry Sharp says this a lot. I don't care how conservative or liberal or independent or whatever you are in your personal life, how you choose to live your life. As long as you are okay with me living my life the way that I live my life, provided that we aren't hurting each other's bodies or lives or rights or property, then we should be able to have that respect for one another. And if we have that, then it doesn't matter how you live or how I live or how you live, because we're just respecting each other's rights. And that's the most unifying thing on earth. And it's no wonder that government wants to destroy that, because they don't want us unified. They want us divided to distract us from the fact that they're robbing us of trillions of dollars a year. They're literally creating money on a, they're not even printing it anymore. They're just creating zeros on a digital ledger and then giving this money, or the ledger money, to the billionaires who put both of their parties in office, and they stick us and future generations that haven't even been born yet with the debt for it. And if at any point we stop being at each other's necks over every stupid, dumb argument, whether some 17-year-old kid was a murderer or defended himself, we're all screaming at each other over it, right? And meanwhile, they're robbing us of trillions of dollars. If for 1 second we said, you know what? I don't care about your opinion about Kyle Rittenhouse. As long as you're cool with me having my opinion about it, I don't care. Hey, let's go talk about those guys that are robbing us of trillions of dollars, destroying our future, and doing it to enrich themselves and the people that put them in office. That's why they keep us at each other's throats.
Exactly. I was telling my friend, he was sending me this stuff about the election and all this stuff. And I was like, hey, I get it. You know, some people see there's some improprieties that may or may not have went on. But ultimately, what are we actually arguing about? And my conclusion was, which authoritarian do you want in charge? Because at the end of the day, the Democrats and Republicans have one single goal, and that's a one-party rule. And nowhere in the history of mankind has a single-party rule been beneficial to the liberty and the natural state of mankind anywhere in the world, anywhere in recorded history. And with that, I ask you, what direction do you think this nation is moving in right now with everything that's going on? You know, we saw the results of the Rittenhouse trial today. And, you know, for me, I never would say anybody doesn't have the right to self-defense. I have a son the same age as him. I just wouldn't have taken my son to that area. I wouldn't have done that. I thought that was, and I lost before I got permanently banned from Facebook. I had just about 15,000 followers on the other black guy who likes gun show, which I'm still representing, but now it's been rebranded. But I said I thought his mother was a blithering idiot for putting your kid in a dangerous situation. He didn't even have body armor. I mean, who knows what could have happened to that kid, and how would she have felt if something, the worst case scenario, happened where roles were reversed, and now he's dead. Now he's been martyred for his side, you know. So that I'm wondering, where are we going as a nation right now?
Yeah. So my take on it's very similar to yours when it comes to Kyle Rittenhouse. I think it wasn't a good idea for him to go there. But once he was there, he wasn't trespassing, he wasn't threatening people, and he only shot at the people that attacked him. But I don't think it was a good idea to go there. I'm not encouraging people to go out and try to recreate the Kyle Rittenhouse experience. Now, with that said, here's where I think we are going. And it's a very interesting time. And I say interesting the way that the Chinese do when they wish you poorly by wishing you interesting times. We're heading in a very interesting confluence of events.
Yeah.
In one way, people in America demand autonomy and respect for their personal choices and their identity and their consent in this hyper-focused way that has never existed before. This concept of consent culture, which is, by the way, that's the basis of libertarianism, is consent and respect for autonomy. So that's a good thing that that's happening. But at the same time, there's two other things that are happening. One is that because government has spent so much time breaking people's legs and stealing their wallets and using some of the money to buy them crutches, entire generations of people are led to believe that they were born crippled and that government's job is to give them crutches. And that, or that the people that are making them crippled are the bad rich people, and that the good government is going to stop them, even though they also complain about the fact that government and corporations and billionaires work together, but then at the same time you want them to help. Anyway, it's not a fully thought out theory. It's not accurate, but they want to be provided for, not because they're lazy per se, but because they've had all their opportunity. If all the ladders have been removed, if you're sitting there in a safety net and all the ladders have been removed and you're looking around and someone goes, yeah, the problem is the safety net. And it's like, no, the problem is I'm stuck in the safety net, right? But if all you see is safety net, then you're like, hey, can I have a pillow? Can I, if I'm going to be down here, can I be comfortable at least? So there's that. But then, and we've really seen this. We saw this right after 9/11. We've certainly seen this with COVID. And it's funny because we talked like a couple months before the whole COVID thing. So now all that nonsense has happened since then. But fear.
Yes. Making
someone so scared that you can convince them of anything. I can tell you, if you're already so scared of getting this disease and dying, or a close loved one getting a disease of dying, or everyone you care about, including yourself, getting a disease and dying or being very sick. And that fear allows me to say to you, all we need to do is force you to stay in your home unless you go outside to the store at the exact same time that everyone else is at the store. And then you come back inside to your poorly ventilated home to huddle around your closest loved ones, like cold and flu season. That's going to work great to slow the spread of COVID. And if you usually heard that, you'd be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But if you're scared and you're already conditioned to believe that government is the one who, solves problems in crisis or catastrophe, then you go, okay, fine, you take care of it, right?
Yeah.
That is what has and if I can say it's temporary, 15 days to slow the spread. Just think, Marcus, we're only 14 days away at this point from slowing the spread. If you can convince someone it's temporary, we just saw this in Austria. They've reintroduced lockdowns. Originally, it was just going to be for unvaccinated people. Now it's for everyone. And it went from 10 days to now they said we'll end it when the curve goes back down. If you can make something feel temporary, anyone can tolerate a lot of things temporarily.
Right.
All this to say that it's a combination of destitution and fear that is overriding our increasing desire to be left alone and not be told what to do, which is why it's important for us to show people, yeah, we agree on the left alone, not told what to do part, but here's why they're screwing you when it comes to your fear and when it comes to your destitution. The reason you're in a bad financial situation, the reason why there's a growing gap between you and those with the money and the power, the reason why the cost of living is going through the roof is because of the people that are telling you that they can fix your problem. They set you up for the okie doke so they could come back and say, I can fix this for you. And they're doing the same thing with COVID. So, they created the conditions for COVID to spread as wildly as humanly possible, not allowing testing, shoving COVID patients in nursing homes. And then they turned around and said to you, well, we have to protect you from this thing that we just made much worse. And that's the result of all of this. The more we can connect with people and show them that their desire to be as autonomous as possible isn't just right, but it's actually the answer to all of these things. and that there is no dichotomy between that it is a violation of their autonomy that has led to these things being as bad and terrible as they are, then we can really thread the needle. So I think we're in a weird confluence of events, but I think if we handle it the right way, we can see a freer society.
Yeah, I follow that. And what I was thinking, I was like, that's part of their three-pronged attack, the way I see it, because they begin the indoctrination during public education, whereas you're told how authority figures should never be questioned, and you should just stay in your line. And you know, that's what they do in kids in elementary school. They keep them in their lines, and they tell them not to stray from either direction. Just stay in your line and listen to that authority figure without question. And then the second prong is our media, which doesn't report facts. And that's a cliche and stupid on the surface, but Americans, sometimes we lack critical thinking skills to actually process the data that we're being given by these media outlets. And the third prong of that attack is our politicians. And like we've alluded to, the fear factor. And this is not Joe Rogan's fear factor. It's the, you know, I think a lot of this started after 9/11, after they were like, these are our heroes and we need to wave the flag and we need to be out in front showing our patriotism. Personally, I think patriotism is cool, but it's the nationalism that disturbs me. Because
which is a difference.
Yeah, nationalism is cancer. There has not been one nationalist country in modern times that also respected the liberty and the freedom of man's natural state. And then I tell people that, and they're like, well, you just hate America. I was like, I'm pretty much sure I love America more than you, because the America I see is the one where you could do what you want to do. Following those guiding principles that we discussed earlier, you could do what you want to do. Your guy thinks we should do these things. His guy thinks we should do those things. My guy, like Spike Cohen and myself, we think you should be able to do your thing. And that's the main difference. And I don't know, for me, I think the general populace of this country has put the government above the republic. And I just wanted to get your take on that. Why do you think we have exalted our government to a like a papal sense or a deity, in a sense?
So I think, interestingly enough, this is the fault of the Constitution. So here's I'm going to dive in a little bit here. So our country was founded in a violent revolution against law enforcement, against the biggest government on earth. So it was founded in people saying, you know what the problem here is? Those redcoats, cops, the pigs, soldiers, whatever you want to call them. Back then they said redcoats, but it's the same. They're all the same term. They're telling us how to live our lives because the king's telling them to tell us how to live our lives, and we don't like that. So they went and shot at enough of them until they left. Long story short on that. And then when this country was originally founded, it was founded under something called the Articles of Confederation. And what the Articles of and this is not, and I know you know this, but for anyone else, why this is, I'm not talking about the Confederacy. I'm not talking about like the Civil War. Immediately after we won the Revolutionary War, they started something. They started the colonial government under the Articles of Confederation, and the Articles of Confederation was a serious attempt at creating a limited government. There was no head of state. There was no single unitary figure. It was a Congress that made decisions. They had no power of taxation. They had to go to the states and say, hey, we need this much money to do this and that. Here's the portion of that we would like to get from you. And then they'd have to haggle it out with them over how much they could get. Okay. And then the states were limited in what they could do as well. The government had no power to print money. That was left to the states or to individual banks. People could come up with their own ways of trading. It was a completely free currency system. The government had no way of manipulating money. They couldn't call a standing army. They had to rely on the individual states or individuals working in private militias to come together together to protect the country. This was a real limited government. And the only way that any of it could be changed was with unanimous consent of the entire Congress. If one person in that Congress of, I forget how many people, was it a couple hundred, if one person said no, then it didn't happen. So this was basically a guarantee. And there was no way for them to, try to buy off that guy's vote or anything like that, because they didn't have the power to print money. So it was a literal attempt at a limited government. And then one of the worst people in American history, Alexander Hamilton, convinced enough of the revolutionaries to become federalists. And they basically did what the Hebrews did in the book of Judges in the Old Testament. They looked at the other countries and said, I want that. So the Hebrews said, we want a king. And God said, and whether you believe in God or not doesn't matter. The story is still the same. And God said, what do you mean you want a king? The kings are terrible. You're going to live in suffering, and then the people are going to go to war with you, and you're going to suffer, and it's going to be terrible. And here are all the things that are going to happen. They went, yeah, but we want a king. We still want a king. Look at the prestige of the king. And he's like, the prestige of the king is built on your backs. Why would you want this? And they're like, no, we want it. Give it to us. So fine, you got a king. And then everything happened. This is what happened with the Federalists. They said, we want a powerful, strong, centralized government like in Europe. And the Anti-Federalists said, well, first of all, you're committing treason. So explain to us why we shouldn't hang you for treason, because you're proposing eliminating our government. Second of all, Europe sucks. We don't want to be a part of Europe. We don't want to do the things the way Europe did. We literally fought a war not to be Europeans. What are you doing? And so they added some lip service. So the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, were written in such a way to convince enough of the Anti-Federalists not to kill them for treason and instead to sign on to it, because we were guaranteeing your rights, even though the first 2 articles alone of the Constitution lay out everything the government can do to you. They can rob, kidnap, or murder you at will, as long as they decide for themselves using their own system that you deserved it. But anyway, so then they illegally replaced the Articles of Confederation with the Constitution. And by illegally, I mean they required, 3/5 ratification for it to pass. Well, the current government, the Articles of Confederation, said it was only with 100% approval that it could pass. So they went, now we're going to ignore that illegally. And so they introduced, so the very first act of the Constitution was an act of treason against the true American revolutionary government. And it only got worse from there, because the first act, one of the first acts from our very first president, was to seize the guns of veterans who were protesting the fact that they weren't getting paid, and instead they were being taxed on whiskey to pay off debts to European countries. And that has started the cascade of all the nonsense since then. So going back to your original question, why do people put the government above the republic? This republic created the government that we are in. So the short answer to this very long answer is by design. It always intended, the rapscallion Alexander Hamilton always intended for us to put government over the people. This system is working exactly as intended.
Yeah, because I personally believe the Constitution is a piece of paper, and it truly does not guarantee you shit. Because number one, I believe, and I don't know if this is controversial, but I believe your liberty and your freedom start at the very first heartbeat, but I can't tell anybody else,
Right.
But yeah, I have this buddy, and his nickname was Whiskey Rebellion, and I was like, what, that's really cool, because I don't think they emphasize the Whiskey Rebellion enough. Going back a tad bit further, I don't think they emphasize Bacon's rebellion enough. Because you look at all of these societal problems, and the vast majority of the racial issues and injustice issues started with Bacon's rebellion, where indentured servants and black slaves joined together against the elitists. And they were enacting some of the most American shit ever possible. And it was put down through the caveat money and promising people prestige. And this nation was set on, because I believe in God. I'm not super biblical. I think my favorite verse in the Bible is like Psalms 43. And but there's a passage in the Bible that says you shouldn't build your house on sand. You need to build it on stone. And some unpopular opinions I have, especially with a lot of these people talking about pedophilia and all this stuff and human trafficking. I was like, literally, this country was built on human and sex trafficking. It was an integral part of the foundation of this country. So it's not new. Secondly, when you look at America, the concept, like I said earlier, it was an experiment because like we were saying, it was all brand new. And then I'll make this my final controversial saying or whatever on this topic.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump says he didn't want people coming from shithole countries. Europe was a shithole. That's why everybody came over here. So let's not, everybody wants to like cherry coat or whatever the founding of this nation, but we need to go back and reanalyze it so we could see where we need to go, because we've definitely gone off the tracks. We're not on the road anymore. We're in the wilderness as far as where we are heading and what direction, because there is some very serious left or right issues that we're going to go one way or another in this country. Mm-hmm. And we need to understand that the difference between Democrats and Republicans is nothing, and they don't want what you want. They want what they want.
It's branding. So Republicans and Democrats are playing a giant good cop, bad cop routine. The Republicans play good cop to their base. So we see this with like Donald Trump. I'm gonna fight for you and your rights, and we're gonna respect your rights and your whatever. And Joe Biden says, "Listen here, Jack, Corn Pop was a bad dude," or whatever they say. And so they do their good bit. The Democrats tend to talk about fairness and equality and protection, and Republicans tend to talk about individualism and respect for rights and a limited government. Although increasingly they don't talk about that. They talk about the power of America, and they actually are largely talking about the same things, just under different branding. But more importantly, they play bad cop to the other side. Have you ever watched like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Nancy Pelosi or Trump or Ted Cruz or someone on that side, and they'll do stuff and you think, you just made half the country hate you. Why would you say that? Like, how did that help you? Yeah. It has to. Yeah. It's crucial to them that half the country hate them on both sides, because when Joe Biden says, listen, we have to stop Donald Trump, and people go, you're the architect of everything I hate for the last 40 years. Look at all this shit you've done. Look at what Kamala Harris, this is who I'm supposed to vote for. All the other Democrats go, Donald Trump. We have to stop Donald Trump. And if someone goes, but he works with Donald Trump, they work together. No. Donald Trump, look what he said about us. He said that there were good people on both sides with the Nazis, and he said that Mexicans were rapists. And then on this side, they could say, he said that Kyle Rittenhouse was a white supremacist. Joe Biden, said this and said that about us. And Nancy Pelosi said this. Hillary Clinton called us a basket of deplorable. They do this intentionally to get you to vote for the lesser evil. Now, why would you do something knowing that it's going to make half the country hate you, on the promise that they're also going to do something that's going to make half the country hate them? If I know my opponent is doing something that makes half the country hate them, why wouldn't I do stuff that makes no one hate me, making me the instant winner? Because they're not my competition. We're working together to play a big game on the American people. And it's never going to end until we stop. No con game ends until you stop letting them con you. Literally just stop voting for them.
Yes.
If you don't want to vote Libertarian, vote Constitution or Green Party, or make your own party, run yourself as a write-in, or don't vote at all, or whatever. I don't care. Stop voting for the people who created this mess in the vain hope that they're going to fix it, or even worse, because you think this person will make a marginally worse mess than this person. Stop it. They're working together.
Yeah, the only I always say this, the only two things you can get Democrats and Republicans to agree upon is war and legislation like the NDAA and the Patriot Act. That's the only thing. Well, there's actually three things.
And bailouts.
Bailouts. And keeping, I guess it's four now, and keeping the system the same. I think we could add some more to this, but
they all largely fall under that, right? Like controlling people, killing people, enriching the people who put them in office, and making sure no one else can get involved in their system that they built. They all fall under those four things. That
is the foundation of Democrats and Republicans in our current democracy, because this is not a republic. I will keep saying
not anymore. No.
So let's lighten this up a little bit, because we touched on a bunch of things that are going to make people say, I truly hate our government. And they should, because I say I'm not anti-government, because if you're anti-government in a republic, that means you hate the people.
Right.
So I'm just anti-government. I'm gonna leave it at that. So we get in Spike's car, and you're driving, and you turn it on. What comes on the radio? What are you listening to?
Wow. So I can answer that, because I actually don't listen to the radio. I usually listen to stuff that is on my YouTube playlist that comes up. Let's pull up a couple things. I've got let's see, MF Doom.
Yes.
I've got who else do I got here? Fat Joe just came out with a new album. Let's see who else. A lot of Griselda, West Side Gun. I got Rock Marciano, Stove God Cooks, Jim Jones, Dave East, Smoke Dizza. Got some Latin music, Juan Luis Guerra, DJ Khaled, Brayson Tiller. I got a DMX, T-Pain, Conway the Machine, Benny the Butcher, Styles P, Marsha Ambrosius, little R&B time, Big Sean. Who else do I got? Black Thought, T.I., Jada, the Locks, Busta Rhymes, Rick Ross, some more West Side Gun, some salsa music, Freddie Gibbs. I think the Planet Asia. That's pretty much what I got going.
Nice. Yeah, with that playlist, you would have been the first black vice president had you won. Because like for me,
Afro Latino, because there's some Latin music in there.
Okay, yeah. Because for me, MF Doom, R.I.P. dude. That's like
my Lord,
one of the most influential MCs that I've ever listened to. And then when I'm feeling kind of like I don't like gangsters. Because when I was growing up in SoCal, I viewed gangbangers as this scum, because I would go to parties to look for girls. They would go to parties and I'm not, look, I think they have a element that they're confused about their sexuality. I'll say it like that, because I would go to the party and I would be looking at girls. They go to the party, they look at dudes and what they're wearing. It's like, why is that guy wearing that color? Why is he like looking the way
You're the fashion police? Yes.
Yeah. And I was like, you're sitting here focused on that dude. I'm like, what's her name? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting to me, because like the Rock Marciano, it makes me feel kind of like, when you listen to him, you kind of like you get amped up a little bit, and are like, man, you better not look at me, even though I am a non-violent. I have never started, and it's one of my proudest attributes that I think I have, that I've never started a physical altercation in my life. I haven't really had to, because I'm like 6'5" and 230, 240.
That helps. That helps.
I mean,
and well armed, and also well armed. So like all of those things contribute to no one wanting to fight you. Yeah.
Well, I always say, I tell my son, I was like, I got about 10 good years of hands left. After that, I'm just going it's going to pistols. I don't have.
So now picture me listening to this music,
right?
And I'm bopping along, this nerdy white guy listening to this music, and I get out of my car. I'm like, "Hey, folks, now let's get this done." Like, I mean, that's always. So I've always been that guy. It's funny because I was long, because now it's like mainstream. White people listening to rap music is mainstream.
Oh yeah.
There were like really racist terms to describe white people who listened to rap music when I was a kid, and we all know that I'm sure you know them. It rhymes with some of the more popular ones. But anyway, I was that kid. I always was into it, but I didn't act black. I always acted like this. So they'd hear me like bumping like Master P or Tupac or something. And then I'd get out and be like, hey, everyone. Like, you know, so it's always been like that weird dichotomy. But yeah, no, that's my playlist is a finely curated Afro-Latin mix of music.
I say you kept it real, you know, and in
Yes.
every sense of that Dave Chappelle skit,
Yes.
you kept it real. So like, I follow what you're saying, because like I'm kind of dating myself, but when I was in high school, it was like 8th grade into high school, the Beastie
Yep.
Boys came out.
Yes.
And there was a complete disconnect where I grew up in the suburbs of SoCal between my white homies and my Black and Mexican homies. We got together for football and sports and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
When it came to music, there was a cavernous divide in what we listened to. Then the Beastie Boys came out, and that cavern shrunk a tad bit more. And I think they opened the door a little bit more. And then unfortunately, I have to include Vanilla Ice in that conversation, because he was a few years after that.
Yep.
And then
Snow.
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 I gotta be honest, to this day I still dislike Snow. I think he's absolutely horrible.
A fun fact, Snow to this day still has the best-selling reggae single. If you consider which the charts did, I don't know why they considered Informer to be reggae. If anything, it's dance hall, but they consider it reggae. It is still the top-selling reggae single of all time, is by Snow.
That disturbs me to no end. Because and then we had like Third Base and House of Pain, and those guys, you know, you had to respect. I don't care what demographic you came from, but Third Base and House of Pain, you had to respect their game. Those dudes were no joke. And then you know, because you know, my hip hop, the 90s hip hop, not this garbage that they have today, that, you know, they refer to it as the golden era. And you know, one of the proudest moments that I've had when it comes to hip hop is my son. He plays baseball, and he had his walk-up song in high school, and it was "Whose World Is This" by Nas.
Oh, wow.
And when that song used to come on, I used to kind of look around at the parents and like, you know, this is my son. You know, he knows good hip hop. He's out in New York right now playing baseball. But yeah, that's the, you know, the pop culture things in this world that I think about, you know, and I feel people can connect through their music, their culture, their food, as long as you have an open mind. Like when you came on, I like listening to Irish pub music to warm up for my podcast. I think it's an ode to somebody on my mom's side, because she has red hair and green eyes. So I don't know if it was a willing example of you know, my Irish culture, but you know, as far as how I got those genetics on my side per se, but you know, and with this pop culture stuff, you know, we've been seeing all these billionaires shooting massive penis-shaped objects into space lately, and I was like thinking, so these dudes ball this hard where they could shoot male flange or whatever you call them into space. Imagine if the Second Amendment was limitless. Which billionaire would be like the Cobra to you know, to the United States G.I. Joe? Who do you think would win if billionaires waged a war?
So I feel like Jeff Bezos is Cobra, like that. I mean, he feel like, or actually like Dr. Evil, like he almost looks like that, and he's got like the yes, the rockets. It's funny. Elon Musk actually has his profile picture on Twitter, the rocket, one of his rockets, and he has to know what that looks like at first glance. Like it's sitting there with like the sun behind it, and it's like a silhouette, and it's like, you have to know what it is. Like you have to know.
Fronting, bro.
But
stop fronting.
There's no way you don't realize what you're doing there. But who wins these wars? So I don't know. I'm going to go with Jeff Bezos, and only because he has skyrocketed, literally, but he has kind of come out of almost nowhere. This was a guy who like 20 years ago was like, I'm going to make a website where you can buy books and maybe shoes.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I'm going to control the entire supply chain, labor pool. I'm going to control every aspect of what my workers do every minute that they're working. And I'm going to make you buy all of my products and destroy all of my competitors. And if you ever want to leave this godforsaken planet, you're going to have to go on one of my rocket ships. Like it feels like it went very quickly from like, I think it's a great idea. We can use this internet to sell things to like, I'm going to control everything. I think I'm going to go with Jeff Bezos.
So you're saying because he currently has the largest standing army amongst billionaires, and
there's that too.
Enough storage space to put Americans inside a warehouse for an indefinite number of years.
Although a possible either tie or runner-up is Mark Zuckerberg, because he's literally trying to create the Matrix, and he's doing it. He's like, yay, the Matrix. He's like, you'll be able to put on glasses and do whatever you want. You don't even have to leave your house. And it's like, that's literally the Matrix. Like that coupled with you're going to own nothing and like it, and you're going to eat bugs and you're going to eat synthetic food is basically the Matrix. Like you're getting people to be like, this Matrix thing is fun. It's almost like real life, except I don't have to, I can let my muscles atrophy while I lay in bed for the rest of my life. So I think maybe that, but no, I think I still have to go with Jeff Bezos. Yeah.
Jeff Bezos is for Spike Cohen. Now, as we wrap up, do you want to tell everybody how they can find you or where they can get more information about the Spike Cohen?
The Spike Cohen. Absolutely. So my website is spikecohen.com. I am on most social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm now on TikTok for the kids. I finally found some 20-year-olds who could help me on my TikTok. Nice. And that's been lying dormant for way too long. And I am, what is that? Sorry, I touched my headset and it started playing a video. Anyway, so I'm on those social media. I also have the podcast, like the one that Marcus was on. I have My Fellow Americans and the Muddy Waters of Freedom. Those are on Muddied Waters Media, and you can find that on all social media platforms, all podcasting platforms, and also on muddiedwatersmedia.com. And finally, I'm going to be launching an organization towards the end of this year called You Are the Power. And basically what You Are the Power is going to do is fill all the gaps that will never be filled by any political party. Because the reality is power and us taking back our lives and our rights and our communities is going to happen in a decentralized way with us working together as leaders and activists in our communities to create better ideas and solutions than anyone else has. And there's only so much that a political party can do to be a part of that. Everything that a political party cannot do, You Are the Power is going to do. If you want to be a leader or an activist in your community, we're going to give you the tools and the resources and the network of other like-minded activists and leaders to do the work in our communities, to work as the army for human liberty that is fighting for a world set free in our time. So much more on that coming soon. We'll be launching that later this year. But yeah, stay tuned. SpikeCohen.com, MuddyWatersMedia.com. And Marcus, as always, thank you for kickstarting my political career and my life. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and count me in on your new program. I'm 100%
Absolutely
down. And in closing, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this one last thing. Where did the Tasha's husband stuff come from, that you were going places and instead of saying, like, dude, that was so freaking hilarious. So I was dying when I saw it.
So here's how this started. And so first of all, anyone who's met my wife, she's way smarter than me. She's way funnier than me. She's way more kind than me. She's way more gracious than me. And I'm told she's attractive too. But anyway, so I went to no, so here's part of the problem. We used to both be attractive. Okay. So we used to both, but she hasn't aged. Okay. I know. Black does not crack. Ashkenazi Jew ages like milk. So we both once were these attractive 20-something-year-olds. Now she's, it's like 14 years later. She looks younger than she did when I met her. And I look like this. So it's not fair. But anyway, so I went to the Libertarian Party of Alabama convention, and the chair of the party there, Laura Lane, she said, I need to show you something before we start this event. And I went, okay. And so she showed me the program, and she's like, flip to where it shows you. And so I went, and I'm the keynote speaker, and it has me there. And I'm like, what's the problem? It has the other speaker, John Mons, there, and me. And I'm like, I don't see the problem. And then I see it says Tasha Cohen's spouse. And any reference to me in the description or anywhere else on the program, it wouldn't say Spike. It would say Tasha's spouse or her spouse or whatever. And I'm like, oh, she's like, are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah, it's funny. So I put it on social media. I figured a couple hundred people would be like, oh, that's funny. It went and turned viral. I've been introduced as Tasha's spouse on like mainstream publications. It has completely taken on a mind of its own. I hope people remember my name at this point.
Yeah. Well, I think they will. And I want to thank you oh so much for coming on. And,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you thanking me for setting you on this course, because, that's going to be my claim to fame. I'm going to be like your Karl Rove or whatever that.
Yes, literally. Yes.
But yeah, thank you, brother. And, maybe a little bit further down the line when somebody else shoots somebody and there's a controversial trial, we could get you back on. So I'll take an advance.
Let's not keep meeting like this, right? Like, why do we only get together when someone kills someone?
But thank you very much.
Yeah.
And do you have any closing words?
No, man, I'm just happy to be here. Anyone who's happy that I'm on the political scene, thank Marcus. Anyone who's mad about it, blame Marcus. It's his fault.
Hey, there it is. And to everybody, and always in America, live free or die. Thank you.